You are listening to Any Given Sunday, a part of the Dead End Podcast Network. Please subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, and all other podcasting services. Please make sure you check out Dead End Hip Hop, Dead End Sports, Dead End Gaming, Is the Mic Still On, Chris Platt's Strictly Hip Hop and Hoops Talk, and a host of other shows on our podcast network. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. You are listening to Any Given Sunday for Sunday, February 14th, 2021. I am your host, Manny Brown. I am joined by my co-host, Josh. What's good?
What's going on, Manny?
What is up? What's up, man? Happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there. Valentine's Day to your loved ones. Happy Valentine's Day to my lovely wife. It's a good weekend, good long weekend. Hopefully you guys enjoy your President's Day. And if you have the day off, enjoy it. If you don't, sorry for you. A lot of shitty weather around the country. We've got we like to, here in the Pacific Northwest, we like to, because we don't get a lot of snow. People don't find it hard to believe. Like in our area, like the Seattle, Tacoma area, we don't get a lot of snow. We're actually like surrounded by a mountain, but we don't get the snow down here. So when we actually do get snowfall bigger than like maybe 2 inches, like it becomes like snowpocalypse. And that's what they're calling this one. It was the Snowmageddon 2 years ago when we had, 4 or 5 feet of snow. So, this weekend we got poured on. We got poured on in Seattle here in the Seattle area. So, just snowed in, enjoying a nice, relaxing, quiet, comfortable weekend. How about you, man? How was your week?
No sympathy on this end.
No, I know.
Yeah, it is really bad, but weekend's fine. I'm just working, man. It's just not eventful. Gonna be home the whole time.
Yep. Yeah. It's February. It's just that month, man. I feel like February is like the most depressing month of the year. It's like there's nothing to do, unless you live in like a warm weather state. By the way, do you get upset? Like I'm going on a tangent here for a little bit. Do you get upset like when you're on social media and you watch like friends of yours that may live in like a warm weather climate and they're just like living it up? Just like I do, like, oh no, like not even that. Like, so I have a lot of friends that live in Florida, right? And in Florida, basically in the South, they act like COVID just doesn't exist. Like I'm seeing people in the club, at bars, just hanging out. And part of me is like jealous, right? Like part of me, there's like half of my heart that's like jealous because that's what hey, look, they're doing human being shit. Like I'm jealous, right?
What's that like?
Yeah, like, oh man, I miss going outside. I miss going to the bar. Like, look at that. That's fun. And then there's another aspect of me that's like, you guys do know that COVID is still a thing, like legit still a thing. Like it hasn't gone away. They're like maskless, just having fun. Right. I'm just like, oh, okay, got it. So we're just going to ignore the pandemic, just pretend it's not around.
Pretty much, that's what's happening. Especially in the South.
Yeah, I get it. And I'm not even saying I'm mad at people. I'm just like, I get it. It's just funny to me how, and then like here we're happy because they opened Safeway back to 24 hours. We can finally dine in restaurants now. Like we're just, like, yay! Like it's just like small victories. Nah, man. But it's just funny how like different regions of the country, their whole lives are different than what you're going through. So no. It's a little tangent. Sorry. But yeah, man, glad you had a good week. I had a decent week. Right before we decided to do the show, we got the news that, Trump, to no surprise, right? To no shock, right? I mean, I don't think you or I or anybody that listens to the show was expecting Trump to get impeached or to actually get convicted. So the worst kept secret in the whole world, Trump got off again. Second impeachment and no conviction. Honestly, we don't have to go too in depth with it because I mean it is what it is at this point. We kind of both expected it to be what it was. Yeah. Just kind of your thoughts on the whole situation. I kind of have some strong feelings on it. But I want to get your thoughts on it first.
Well, I mean, I think you and I differ in the fact that I thought they should have went forward with the impeachment. Mm-hmm. Going forward with the impeachment doesn't mean that you can't do other things as well. And I think a lot of people thought they might have been distracted with like things such as the COVID bill or whatnot. And that's for me. I mean, you can chew gum and walk at the same time.
I agree with you, but has Congress proven that they could do that? That's the thing.
This is the Senate, and that has to get through the House, and
right,
and all that. So I mean, it hasn't even reached the Senate yet. So even if like Senate wasn't doing the impeachment. They don't have the bill in front of them. So for me, like, I think for what President Trump did at the time, you have to at least show an attempt to hold the man responsible. Not just him, but the Ted Cruz's of the world, the Lindsey Grahams of the world, the Matt Gaetz, all those guys. You have to show an attempt, because all you're basically doing if you don't show an attempt is saying, yeah, you can incite an insurrection on the U.S. Capitol and get away with it. And we don't care. Listen, we all knew nothing was going to happen. We knew that the Senate was not going to convict Trump. I knew they weren't going to convict Trump. And I am not a fan of virtue signaling, which I think this probably was at the end of the day. It's like, hey, look at us. We're trying to do the right thing here. I get it, but you still have to at least attempt it, because if you don't attempt it, it sends the wrong message. It sends a message that you can get away with anything. It sends a message that you can do whatever you want if you're president of the United States of America. You know, unfortunately, the Republican Senate doesn't have any balls, because basically, and I think this is the bigger problem, and this is something I want to get your opinion on. We spend so much time talking about the Ted Cruz's of the world. We spend so much time talking about, you know, the Republican senators and their congressmen. The real problem to me is the base. We have to stop pretending and stop throwing all of our vitriol towards the people in DC. I understand they have a lot to do with it. I understand they're pieces of shit, because they are. But if their base didn't believe what they believed, if their base didn't have these views that they had, they wouldn't be advocating these type of things. If the Republican base had a spine, if the Republican base was calling for integrity, if the Republican base was calling for law and order, that Senate would have voted to convict Trump, period. Because that's what their base would have wanted. So they're following what their base wants. They're following their base's order. And that base has turned completely toxic, and to me, just despicable. I'm not saying every Republican's like that, but if we're going to pull together Republicans and just talk about most or majority, I know it's generalizing, but I don't give a damn anymore. Like, the reason why the Republican Senate and the Republican congressmen and women are acting the way they're acting and pushing for policies that they're pushing is because the base is fucking despicable. And I'm just sick of, like, you know, I'm sick about talking about Ted Cruz and all these disgusting senators without actually talking about the base and the real problem here. 70-something people voted for Donald Trump after 4 years of what he just did. I'm not saying Joe Biden's great, but at some point with the about face and be like, there's a problem with the citizens of this country. A huge problem. And I don't know how we fix this.
I can't argue anything you said. I mean, I'm 100% with you. I mean, I wish I could add. No, you're right. It is the base. It is the issue of the base. But honestly, like, I think this impeachment, yes, we were on opposing sides of this, because I kind of felt like it was more grandstanding and virtue signaling than it was actually
because they knew they were going to lose. That's
right. So, like, to me, it was just kind of like, like I said before, if this would have happened January of 2019, and I'm not trying to be okay. I'm not saying that what Trump did or what Trump contributed in doing was okay. He incited an insurrection. He incited a riot. Insurrection, riot, uprising, whatever adjective you want to use to describe it, he incited it, right? And that should not go unpunished. But I also feel like timing is everything. And I also feel like you have to kind of read the temperature of the room. And I think that you also have to understand, like, literally the night that, you know, these attacks were going on, right? Or the aftermath of that, the same night, the Senate voted to ratify the election or certify the election. You literally had 7 Republicans that failed to ratify the results of the election. Like, literally, as they literally were ducking behind their tables and desks and fearing for their lives, like, they refused to ratify what we already knew was the result of an election. So, like, why did, and I'm getting there, but it's like, what, like, what else do you need? Right. So, like, you're 100% on the base, and I agree with you. Like, I think the base is ultimately to blame here, because you are like, the politicians in part are responsible for, they work for their donors, obviously, but they also work for their base. They're doing what's politically expedient for their careers. Right. So they know if the base wants one thing, or if the base is here, then they're going to try to follow along, because that's how they advance their careers. That's how they go about getting higher power, right? So this just makes apt sense. But I just think that I think Democrats, and I'm aiming this more towards the establishment. Like we gotta give up this dream of like, oh, if we could just get back to normie Republicans, there's still a kernel of them out there that if we just get them to our side, see, there's still our Republican friends out there. Like, no, that again, the country club Republican, the days of them being the dominant figures in the Republican Party are over with.
But they never really existed. That's the thing.
They were a small minority. Like I always felt like they were never really a big. That aspect of the Republican Party was never a big part of the Republican Party.
No, but they would dog whistle and they used euphemisms and that.
Right. That's the reason that we're here now, right? And I would I'd go back to Atwater and
oh my God, Goldwater,
and Reagan and Bush, and obviously Bush won, and like so hell, forget that. I'd go back to Nixon, right, with Law and Order and all that shit. So they set the groundwork for this when the parties flipped in the late 60s, early 70s. Like they laid the groundwork for this, and like now this is where we're at now, right? Where you can't spend 50 years using dog whistle politics and moving your base further and further and further and further and further to the right. And then like, are aghast that this is where we're here. This is where we're at now, right? Like this is, like this is the result of it, right? So it's just extremely frustrating because it's like, I think that the Democrats, like, what more do you need to see to know that this is like, you are who you are? Like, I live by this motto. Like, if someone shows you who they really are, you believe them.
Right.
Like, and I'm not saying believe them after like the 5th attempt or the 27th attempt. Like, no, like 1 or 2 chances. Like, I've seen all I've seen. Like if you show me that you're an asshole, then I'm going to just assume that you're just an asshole. Like, I'm not going to give you 45 other chances to prove to me that you're not an asshole. And every single time you prove to me that you're an asshole, and then I'm flabbergasted. Like, oh, geez, I didn't expect it. I had no idea that you had these feelings. Like, no, actions speak louder than words. And yes, that's very cliche, but it's still a time true thing, right? It's like it's a time true expression. Like it's still apt and it's still appropriate. Like actions speak louder than words. And these senators, these congressmen, their actions have spoken louder than their words could ever, right? So they'll go out there and they say they love America and they love this and blah blah blah, blah, and they're not harboring a white supremacist or covering for a white supremacist, but their actions say otherwise. So yeah, it's just frustrating because yes, it is the base. It is the base. A lot of it is the base. The majority of it is the base. I would say 90% of it is the base that but I don't even blame the base. The base is just the hungry animal that's been getting the fish, right? Like it's been getting the manifestation of the politics. That's what I'm trying to say. I can't speak tonight, but it's just basically been this 40-year manifestation of dog whistle politics that has gotten us here, right? And I think that the base is just a result of that. Not absolving them.
Dog whistles can't work unless you can hear them. Do you get what I'm saying? Like
I get what you're saying. Yeah. I get what you're saying.
Like dog whistles for that, they're not going to work on you and I. Like, and I'm not saying. And this again, like I want to be very careful what I'm saying. I don't think every Republican's racist. I don't. No. But to be completely honest with you, I think a large part are. I think because they are composed of mostly white men who are in the middle of the country or whatnot, who
feel like they're losing their grip on their country. Like they feel like it's aggrieved white men, right? Like they're mad because there's a Espanol option when they call freaking Sprint. Like, it's like
the base is white. Like and that's the thing. Like we talk identity politics all the time, but like it's just the reality. Like that's just the reality of the Republican Party. 89% of the base is white. Period.
Yep.
Period.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is like, you grow up in all white towns, a religious town, and there's nothing but white people around you, and then you make a culture of like, not train. I don't use the word training, but the women who you surround yourself with, you teach them to be obedient and not to think for themselves and not to go out. Like it's just like this weird culture that we have in America. It's like 2 different countries.
It is 2 different countries. It's just totally different worlds. Forget countries. It's 2 different worlds, right? Like we just live in 2 different worlds. But I
having to pretend that like there's 2 sides to things, and there's like, oh well, we have to speak to like no, I'm done like speaking to the Republican voter. Like I see what you want. I mean,
but see.
if Donald Trump runs again in 2024, there's no doubt in my mind he's going to win a primary. And that's disgusting.
I agree.
That's fucking crazy.
It is crazy. I guess I'm just not that gun-ho because I feel like a lot of this has also been a product of virtue signaling politics. Like, I feel like on a cultural aspect, 100% we're just two different worlds. Like, we just are. Like, it's just like someone that grew up in New York just is in a different world than someone that grew up in rural Alabama. It's just two different worlds. But I don't think it's two different worlds on the issues, right? Like, I don't think, like, one of my like ethos in politics is that I feel like for the last 25, 30 years, politicians have primarily focused on virtue signaling because it actually deflects from the real conversations. It actually deflects from them having to actually go to Congress and actually, oh, by the way, do their jobs, enact policies, popular, successful policies, right? Like, that has been the crux of the issue, right? Like, I don't think we're that split. Yes, we have disagreements on the advantages and the disadvantages of a balanced budget, right? We have disagreements on trickle down economics versus supply side economics. Like, we have disagreements on policies per se, but I feel like we're like on Medicare for all. Like, I feel like there's a kernel there where we could unite more people if we actually got away from the silly virtue signaling politics. Like, cause like I said this on this show, like, some like myself, right? If I have a debate with another man, 34 years old, that grew up in Alabama their whole lives, that has seen the world in one lens, we're never going to agree on cultural things. I agree. I'm with you that we are never going to see eye to eye on anything cultural. And honestly, I'm at the point where I don't even care, right? But we could probably agree that it sucks that billion-dollar multinational corporations get a loan from the government, and 2 months later they're laying off their employees. We could probably agree with that. We could probably agree that Medicare, it sucks that we live in a country that your mom gets sick, gets dementia, and if you don't have the money to pay and take care of her or don't have a proper insurance, you basically just have to throw her to the wolves and just say, throw your hands up, because you just essentially, it's just a shitty system of health, right? Like we could probably find some common ground there, right? So that's where I'm at. And again, it's not, and when people hear common ground, right? Cause even common ground now has become coded. Like, oh, you're just trying to play nice with, no, there's no common ground in racism. There's no common ground in anti-Semitism. There's no common ground in sexism or homophobia. There's no common ground, again, cultural stuff. But on issues, I feel like you can find common ground. And I get so frustrated because I think that I see the bullshit. I see that politicians are trying to divide us with cultural differences, because again, it takes the blame from them, right? It actually shifts the attention, like, oh, why hasn't Congress passed any real law of any real subsequence in the last 20 years? But hey, we're arguing about a bathroom, or we're arguing about, I don't know, Gina Carano getting fired off of Netflix, off a fucking Disney Plus show. Like, we're arguing about these stupid things that are, again, culture based and not real issues that affect you or I, our parents, our friends' parents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, man, I just don't know if, and this is my problem with the left. I feel like, I love, like, cause I'm a leftist for a reason. I believe in, healthcare for everybody, but I feel like a lot of times we think that our policies, like, are common sense.
Right.
And people see things differently. I have not seen a Republican base or any part of the Republican Party be like, why don't we have healthcare? Like, that's never a thought in the Republican Party. There's never a movement in the Republican Party that's like, everybody should have health. There's never
it's
been
not,
that.
But you know what it is? It's also a factor of like our society it is today, right? Because like now we've become so tribalistic, right? Where we only want to hear opinions that we agree with, right? Like that's one of the biggest issues that I have with the whole censorship movement, right? Where it's like you only, like if I only talk to you, Josh, every day, like if I only talk to you, I never heard any other outside opinion, I just heard your opinion. Like, how am I going to grow as a person? Because you and I are like-minded in our policies and in our belief systems. So we own, like, of course, we could sit here and have a discussion on politics and have an agree fest for most of the time, right? But there's things we disagree on. There's tactically some things we disagree on, but for the most part, right? We have about an 80%, 88% agreeance on the issues, right? if you and I are the only dialogue that we're having in each other's lives, then how are we ourselves growing? Because I think that's the issue also in the left too, because it's like you say on the left, like we just think our policies are common sense, right? And to a point, yes, they are common sense. But to some people that have never had to ask those questions to themselves, it's not common sense. Or if you've been told that the Democrats are not trying to give you health care, it's just socialism, and socialism is bad and it's communist. And I don't know why I'm using a Southern accent.
It's literally health care for everybody.
But look how it's framed.
I get it. It's socialism. Socialism's bad. Look what happened in Venezuela. Look what I get it. But my thing with that is like, okay, so like, what are you doing? Like, what are you proposing then for healthcare? Because you agree that healthcare doesn't work for this country. So what is your proposal? And all they did for 6, 7, 8 years was try to repeal Obamacare. And then when they got into office, they didn't actually do it. They did not present a plan. And the Republican base didn't care. I don't mean to cut you off, but that in that of itself is my point, right? Like it was never about Obamacare. It was never about the issue. Right. It was about the person that his name was attached to it. It was culture war stuff. I agree. But it also goes to my point where it's just kind of like, I know you say this common ground stuff, but where's the common, when we talk about healthcare, there's no part of the Republican Party that goes, hey, you know what? Maybe everyone should have healthcare. That doesn't come out of anyone's mouth that's a Republican or a conservative. Maybe anecdotally, maybe I know a conservative or two who might say that. But as far as like a caucus in the Republican Party or a base in the Republican Party,
you know why? Not
hear that, period.
You know why? Because but the overarching theme is that you don't hear that from the Republican Party and politicians in Washington, et cetera, because they're all corporate ghouls. But
the Democrats are corporate ghouls too, and you have a leftist movement that is dying for Medicare for all. And even the people who do not agree with Medicare for all at least are saying, let's at least get a public option. Like we still are trying to find a way to get everybody health care as cheaply as possible. We may have I'm talking about the base. I'm not talking about the politicians, because if the politicians wanted it, we would have it. Do you get what I'm saying?
I do.
If you talk to most leftists, if you talk to most Democrats, quote unquote, they believe that most people, if not all, should have health care. How we go about it is different.
Well, honestly, but see, this is where I disagree with you, because it's like I don't even feel like the left or liberals, the Democrats, right? I don't feel like we're united on Medicare for all, because there's still a huge segment of the Democratic base that feels like, oh, well, what's the problem with Obamacare? Like, people have health care.
I think there's a huge part of the base that's like, we should add the public option. I think the opposition to Medicare isn't Obamacare, it's the public option. I think at this point it is genuinely known on both sides of the aisle that Obamacare fell short, that the Affordable Care
It's Romney care.
Yeah.
That's the part that
But I do think that liberals and leftists and even Democrats are willing to acknowledge that. Now,
but they're willing to acknowledge it, but they're not willing to put they're not willing to put their skin in the game, right? Like, I could sit and like, I can be a normie Democrat from Connecticut, you know, I don't know, name a Connecticut governor. I don't know, pick a freaking normie Democrat out of a hat, right? Like, right. I could be this guy like, yeah, I think that healthcare, like you heard it in the debate, right? Like Joe Biden, I do think that healthcare is a right. So do you support Medicare for all? No, I don't.
Right.
I support a public option that kind of leads us to maybe a sort of reconciliation of the system. But like, no, you're right. Talking circles.
Yeah, it's bullshit to us, but what I'm saying to other people, they fall for that shit, and to them, it's like, well, that's probably the easiest way everyone could have healthcare. Period. What I'm saying is that there's nothing on the right with that conversation. All it is, it's repeal Obamacare, repeal this, repeal that. There's never any discussion on the right about how to get everybody in this country healthcare. Because
from the right perspective, on the politician side of things, they only care about the corporate impact, right? Like,
what about the base? But what about why doesn't the base care?
Because the base, I think the base does care. I think
why don't we hear it?
You know why I think we don't hear it? Because it doesn't sell. It doesn't feed the narrative. Like you just said it yourself, right? For 8 years, right? All we heard was Obamacare bad. No real context to it. Obamacare bad. Why? Because a black guy named Obama was attached to it. And because it was the Democrats, right? And his socialism and Venezuela and Cuba and all rolled into one. I mean, basically it was Obama dressed as Fidel Castro coming to a town near you to deliver healthcare. And that's bad, right? Then what happened? Trump got in office. The first thing he tried like hell. They tried like hell to repeal it and overturn it. But what happened?
And the public was like, no.
But what happened? The base didn't want it because it was never an issue on the policy itself. So that's what I'm saying. Like, the issue isn't the policy. The issue is who's delivering it, who's tying a bow around it.
But that also goes like, but that goes to my point when I think we discussed this before. It's like you and I can preach Medicare.
But you're not going to hear it. But you're not going to hear that on Fox News because it doesn't feed the narrative. Fox News is probably not going to discuss the fact that 88% of Republicans actually like Obamacare. They're not going to tell you that because that doesn't feed the narrative.
But even those 88% of Republicans probably don't even know that they like the Affordable Care Act. Like those type of polls, they're kind of like ask questions like, do you support this provision? And they don't know that it's from the Affordable Care Act. And it turns around, they turn around and they're like, oh, those are all things from the Affordable Care Act. I didn't know that, or I don't care. But my point to that is that you are right.
Yeah, good point. Yes.
I think we're agreeing on everything. I think for me, what I'm just trying to say is that A, I don't see the stuff coming from the Republican base or the conservative base. And then B, I don't know if we can find common ground with people because at the end of the day, when you and I go to Arkansas and we're talking about, don't you think everybody should have healthcare? Even if we get to the point where they agree to us, when they see that the Democratic Party is a part of it and there's a Muslim woman, Ilhan Omar, endorsing it, AOC, a Puerto Rican from the Bronx, we lose that every single time. The culture war stuff, as much as I hate to admit it, it's fucking important, and we need to win that, and we need to progress as a country in cultural issues.
See, this is where I disagree because I don't think we're going to win as a country on a culture war aspect. Like, I just don't think we are.
I think we do as liberal. I think it just takes time.
Like we're going to win on the policies. We will win the policies every day, twice on Sunday. Like,
yeah.
But the culture war stuff, I just don't think there's any winning. Like look at us. We're still
as in like election wise, or you mean winning as in kind of like changing society?
Changing society, hearts and minds. Like we're literally like civil rights or the civil rights movement was what, 50, 60, 70 years ago? And we're literally still having some of these same discussions today. Like the fact that lynching was still allowed.
Yeah.
Like as recently, I think it's still allowed. Like I think it still hasn't been in some parts. It's still like the fact that we're still having these conversations in 2018, 2019, 2020, it just shows us like we're still, of course, we're not where we were, but we're still so far from advancement and we're still so far from being where we need to be. So like, that's where I'm saying like, we're never going to win a culture war. We're never, because you're always just going to have this just annoying, like, whataboutism game. And it's like, oh, well, they suck because of this and you suck because of that. And it's like, we never get anywhere. And my thing is, and this is why me and you talk offline. It's like, well, get involved in politics. And it's like, this is why I can't get involved in politics because I'm an issues guy. Like, I will sit down as long, again, there's a couple things that there's no difference of opinion on. You don't think my life matters? We can't sit down and talk. Like, you're homophobic. We can't sit down and talk. You know what I'm saying? Like,
for the country, man. Like that's,
I understand that, but I feel like there's folks, and maybe I'm naive. I'm willing to accept that maybe I'm naive. Maybe I'm full of shit. Maybe I have a pie in the sky mentality, right? But I'm willing to believe that there's some people that honestly, once you kind of sit down and explain to them, because I really believe that there's a lot of people that just hate Obamacare because they've been programmed to hate Obamacare.
I think most people hate Obamacare because they're programmed to hate Obamacare.
Right. Or they just hate the Democrats because they've been programmed to hate the Democrats.
Yes.
And vice versa, right? Like you've been programmed to hate Republicans. Like
I disagree with that, man.
Not us.
Do you know honestly, when you think of Republicans and conservatives, they feel more like a party. They feel more like a tight-knit group. This is anecdotal. I will fully admit that 1000%. I could be wrong with this when it comes to like national data. But to me, in my experience, living in New York, the whole Democratic Party isn't a thing where we're like, we vote Democrat and we are Democrat. F Republicans. That's how it's never been. Anyone I know.
Hey.
Ever.
Maybe you're right.
I don't know any proud Democratic Party. families. I know a lot of proud Republicans and proud.
I know a lot of proud Democratic families, man.
Well, that's why I said. That's why I said.
I know, and yeah, everything is relative to your experience, right? So, like, I can't sit there and tell you you're wrong. I could just tell you based on my experience. I've seen a lot of vote blue. I've seen a lot of vote blue, no matter who.
Well, I've seen that lately because Donald Trump took office, and it's like, well, we got to vote.
No, it was before that. I think it was before that. It was like anything with Donald Trump, right? Like everything just becomes hyperbolic because it's Donald Trump. The stakes are raised because of Donald Trump. But I think it was like that even before that. Like I think it was this before then. Like so I don't think that like all of a sudden this just changed or became worse or got exasperated. Like no, I think it was always like that. So.
I'm saying anecdotally, I don't know anyone who's like, I'm a Democrat. Boom. I think I know a lot of people who are like, I'm a leftist, I'm progressive, I'm liberal, I vote Democrat because, I kind of have to. That's how.
And I'm telling you, I know a lot of folks that just have been Democrats because their mom and dad.
Then how do we lose elections? How do we lose elections? There are more of us registered as Democrats. More people lean left in this country. How do we lose elections?
We lose elections because Republicans know how to win in politics.
And because Democrats don't, or people who are registered as Democrats are not interested in it because they don't look at themselves as Democrats. They just vote for Democrats whenever they so happen to vote. That's my point. Well, if Democrats treated the politics like Republicans, they wouldn't lose an election.
But now you're getting to a separate part of the conversation, right? Why do we lose elections? And not that, I mean, we could be here all night with just on that question alone.
I just mean, I just sheer numbers.
Right. In sheer numbers. But people like to think, this is what gets me annoyed, right? Like people like to think that politics is just a sheer numbers game. And it isn't. In parts it is, and in parts it isn't, right? So like just a Cliff Notes version for everybody. Cause again, we could be here all night just on Josh's question of like, how do we lose elections? Right. But I feel like we lose elections because I feel like and I said this, Republicans are better at politics than Democrats or just liberals in general. They're just wetter. They're wetter. They're better at politics. They probably are wetter too. Shit. They're better at politics. They're wetter too. Oh, wet. No, they're better at politics than we are.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because I don't think every Republican agrees with like you think the normie Republican agrees with the far right extremist wing of the Republican Party? No, they don't agree on those things. In like the extreme, do you really think that like George W. Bush agrees with like, the Alex Jones wing? But that's what I mean.
Align themselves with QAnon supporters who think Democrats are pedophiles.
Because it's all
like, hey, we're trying to give you health care.
But here's the thing, and I'm trying to get around to that point in a long-winded way. But here's my thing, right? Yes, you're right. They rather align themselves with the Alex Jones, the QAnon wing of that party, because they understand how power works. They understand that, like, hey, there's strength in numbers, and B, they look at it as existential. Like, they don't care. They understand that, hey, I may not agree with this. Like, they may think that like a Marjorie Taylor, whatever her fucking name is, that quack job that just got booted from her committee assignments. Like, they understand she's a piece of shit and that she's whacked out of her mind, right? The normie, the country club Republicans, they probably think like, yeah, she's funny. She got a little quacked out little booger there. But they understand that, hey, she has appeal. She has a base. She has people that support her. She's more valuable to us in our fight. They look at this shit as a war. The Republicans look at this shit as existential war. This is a war on our way of life. This is a war on our way of thinking. This is a war on what we believe America should be. And I don't think liberals and Democrats see it in the same light. We look at this shit strictly as like, oh, well, why don't we have health care? This is common sense. This is just a common sense fight. Like, no, Republicans see this shit as war. Like this is no different to them than the French Revolution. This is no different than the Arab Spring to them. Like, they really believe this shit. So this is why, and with that, when you make something existential and you make this like a battle for I hate that, the battle for the soul of America. Right. Like, for them, in their mind, this is what they really believe, right? So when you make that, there's nothing that you wouldn't do to A, win that war, and B, you have to understand how power works. Republicans understand that, hey, we can sit here and we can get back and forth on these little cultural war arguments and whatever. But how do you really amass power? You amass power through the presidency. You amass power through winning these state leaderships, government seats, and you amass power with the courts.
Right.
And Democrats and Republicans have not understood that. They just refuse. It just like they're brain dead to that. It's like everybody's celebrating Trump is gone, right? Like this is what pissed me off that Saturday when it was finally announced that he won, right? Or Biden that he won and Trump lost, right? Everybody's in the streets honking their horns. Yay! Trump, the evil monster, is gone. And yeah, part of me was excited too, right? But then I looked at it, I was like, yeah, he's gone, but the damage is already done. Republicans got the court. They got the Supreme Courts and the lower courts at that. Right. The tax cuts have already been passed. Right.
Right.
Trump won. He may have lost the battle, but he won the war. He won the war. He's divided the country. He's brought more attention to that like white populism aspect that he was trying to bring up, even whether unwittingly or unwittingly, whatever. He brought more attention to it. Like he won the war. So like, what are we celebrating? He won. He may not have won an election. He's not president.
I get it.
But he still won.
Right.
So like, it's just hard for me to celebrate.
Yeah, I'm not saying celebrate. I think that I think we're agreeing on a lot of different things. I think I'm just extremely jaded by what I see from the base of the Republican Party.
And I am too. And I'm not trying to make it sound like I'm.
Yeah, to take it back to the impeachment to make it full circle.
Yeah.
As disgusting as these senators are, and trust me, they're horrible. Hawley, Cruz, I cannot stand
shitbags. It'll be pieces of shit. Yeah, let's be real.
But they shape shift to what their base wants.
Exactly. Yes.
And their base loves Trump. So what is the next logical conclusion that I can inductively come to with that? Do you get what I'm saying? So why isn't there a part of the Republican base that's populist that's like, hey, why don't we have healthcare? Hey,
there is like, I think there is, right? Like, this is where we disagree. Like, I think there is, right? I think they like Trump. See, you're confusing liking and loving Trump based on Trump's rhetoric and policies. No, I think Trump was the first.
We're progressives. We know there's a base here. We have politicians we prop up and say, these are the politicians who closely align with her. Where is that in the Republican Party?
There isn't, because I would say the Republican Party, I think both parties are corporatist, but I would say the Republicans are obviously way more corporatist than the Democrats, right? They're still like, Republicans don't even hide it that they're corporatist. I mean, they're just out in the open. It's like literally to be a Republican, you basically have to fill out who your biggest donors are. Like you almost have to have a donor spreadsheet already lined up, ready to go, like your first day in politics. Like, so the Republicans are out in the open. So that's why you don't see it. Because again, you have to separate the Republican leadership and Republican folks in Washington from the base. Like you have to separate them, because these people are corporatists at heart. Outside of like the Matt Gaetz of the world that are like, or the Marjorie Taylors that are like,
but they still have to shape shift to their base though. That's my point.
Right, because that's how they win elections. But once they're just trying to win. To tie it back to my original point, why we win and why they lose.
Right.
They understand you just got to get the win, baby. They're like Al Davis. You just got to win, baby.
Yeah, and then once they win, you do what your corporate donors want you to do.
Exactly.
But for the impeachment thing, like to them, this is something that like, in order for me to win in 2022, I'm going to have to not convict Trump.
Exactly.
My base is crazy about Trump now. And what I'm saying is that we have to take a serious look at the Republican base and be completely honest with the fact that we think that Medicare for all is common sense. We think the Green New Deal, if we show them climate change, is common sense. These people, they don't give a fuck about it. And we can sit them down and we can
a lot of them don't. A lot of them don't. I think there is an aspect, there's a segment
there's always some you can pull over. I'm not saying.
Here's my point, and I don't mean to cut you off. I feel really passionate about this, right? Because I don't want this discussion to get like, because again, I get angry when we don't have these nuanced discussions when it comes to this shit, right? Because what bothers me is like, we just sit there and we put in a box that every Trump supporter is racist. And I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm just saying like, oh, they all voted for him because they're all racist. There's not 75 million Klansmen. Like there's not 75 million racists. I mean, although.
And then you have black people and Spanish people voted for him too.
Right. Yeah. What I think Trump's biggest appeal is that he spoke to a segment of people that have been ignored by the neoliberal wing of the Democratic Party for 30 years.
That is true.
They haven't been, and they actively continue to be ignored. Like they don't even reach out. Like you don't even see politicians on the Democratic side of things that are even reaching out to these people. The first person literally to reach out to these folks was Bernie. That's why they feared him. Like this is what I want people to understand. Like this is why they feared Bernie, because Bernie had cross-party appeal. Bernie had a good 10, 15% of Republicans that actually wanted to vote for him. This is why they feared him. He was a threat. He was a threat to their power base. He was a threat to their power, the construct of their power structure. And he was a threat to them because why did he unite a lot of Republicans and Democrats alike? Because he spoke to the issues. He didn't just make like progressive issues an issue just in New York or LA or in big urban areas, but he made it an issue in West Virginia. He made it an issue in Alabama. He made it because that, again, he understands that when you get away from the cultural war shit, like when you get past that, there's issues and there's issues that can be won there. Like you can win some folks. You're not going to win everybody. Out of those 75 million people, you can't win all of them. I'm not naive. I'm not stupid. Of course not. But could you win 15 million? Could you win maybe 20 million out of that? Now we're talking. Now, if you take 75, 78 million, I think it was like 78 million that voted for, or I think it must have been higher. For the sake of this discussion, 75 million that voted for Trump, right? If out of that 75 million, you take 20 million off, right? Now you're talking, that's a lot, but it's not unrealistic. It's not crazy to think about. Like, I honestly don't think I honestly don't believe that that's crazy. And again, maybe I'm naive, and I'm sure somebody will listen to this and they'll think I'm full of shit and I'm naive and I'm gullible and I'm whatever. No, maybe I am, but I just think that you can start poking holes at this shit if you get past the culture war, because I really believe we're never going to win that shit. We're never going to win it, Josh. We're never.
No, I know. My concern as someone who supports progressive policies is that I think we've kind of overestimated how popular these policies are. I mean, even the Democratic Party, man, Bernie couldn't. You can say whatever you want about Obama making a call. You can say whatever you want. At the end of the day, if Medicare for All was as popular as we thought it was, Bernie still would have won.
I disagree with you.
I see. I don't know how would you if Medicare
I disagree with you
was something that everybody wanted,
because this election wasn't about the issues. This election wasn't about the issues.
Like who could beat Trump? But you just laid out perfectly why Bernie could beat Trump. He had crossover appeal.
He could beat Trump, but what did you hear for 9 months in the primaries? That Joe Biden is the most electable. Yeah, Bernie. But again, how we say about Fox News and the right and how they're programmed. A large majority, again, maybe you're not where you're at in New York, and I commend you that you're not around these people, but I'm around a lot of people that are, MSNBC. Yeah. I literally had a lady I work with, smart gal. Like she's a normie Democrat. And she's like, hey, I like Bernie, but I just don't think he can win. Like I don't like MSNBC and the Rachel Maddows of the world, who she consumes like literally everything from. They basically say like, oh, Bernie, his ideas are good, but we're like 20 years from that stuff being realistic. We're like 25 years from that. And it's like they've been programmed to think like Bernie can't win. For 9 months, all you heard is Biden's the choice because he's the only realistic option that can beat Donald Trump. So and when you get that, it's still. Yeah,
but the Medicare for All was so popular, then how come when Biden's elected right now, it's still only us pushing for it? Why? Why isn't the base asking for it? Why doesn't the base care? Because the base does not care. The Democratic base, I'm talking about the voters, do not care. For a large part, it's us, the progressives, who want it. And even with us, we're still fighting with each other over how to even get to the point where we get Medicare for All. So that's my point. Like, I don't think the Democratic base is as left as we think it is. And I don't think the Democratic base cares as much as us progressives do. Like, we are literally we vote for a party that is to the right of us. Like, in any other country.
Yeah, I know. Don't remind me.
So when I think about the Democratic base, to me, it's like these people are more conservative than I am. And when I think about the conservative base, I'm like, how can I even reach the conservative base when I can't even reach the same people in my base?
Yeah. No, and my answer to you, and it's not a perfect answer.
Yeah.
Because you got me there on that. You're absolutely point to you. You got me there. Only thing I would say about that is that I think that the Democratic Party is more central on policy. They're centrist on policy they're left, center left on social issues. I would say left on social issues. More so than I think. I think
they're left in the way Justin Timberlake's like apologizing to Britney Spears and Janet Jackson right now, doing it because it's convenient to do so.
Right. That's
how the Democratic is looking.
That is exactly what it is, right? It's like, oh, we appreciate, like Joe Biden, like, oh, we're gonna do everything for our. Thank you to the black voters.
Thanks for the crime bill, Joe.
Yeah, exactly. Like, thank you for thank you for coming out, and I'll never forget you coming out, even though, he literally like Joe Biden's like thanking black people election night, right? That he won, right? And like, oh, thanking black people that you supported me. Thank you and I'll never let you down, even though he refuses to pass a stimulus check that would help a large majority of black people currently right now. It's like, but yeah, you could say BLM and all this. And he's just
sidebar. Can he pass that executive just to check themselves? Is that something he can pass?
I think he could. I think he could. He honestly could.
Okay.
I'm not an expert at it, so I'm just talking.
But I'm more mad at him.
I think that there is. I think he could have passed some sort of emergency stimulus relief through executive order. I think he absolutely could have.
I didn't mean to interrupt your point.
Right. No. I kind of lost my train. No. So what I'm saying is like, why? Going back to the point that you made, and we'll wrap up with this. Why Medicare for all? If it was so popular, why the base does not care about it? Because I think that we're not I think there's a segment of the Democratic base that deep down believes that Medicare for all is the way we should go. So, give or take, right? Give or take. But I think, are they willing to fight for it? Are they willing to go put their skin in the game, sacrifice, get into the mud to fight about it? I don't think that the Democratic Party views healthcare as an existential issue. They're more concerned with other things that they feel are more existential than healthcare, because they look at Medicare for all as like, oh, well, Joe Biden's not for it anyway, so what's the point of fighting about it? Right? Like, he's already came out and said he's going to veto any bill for Medicare for all. Right? So they probably feel like it's a waste of time. They probably feel like, oh, well, we have Obamacare and that'll do. And even if Joe gets his ultimate way and passes just a public option for Obamacare, that's enough. While leftists are just like, no, that's not enough. Like, that's literally not enough. So I don't have a perfect answer for your question. I think it is popular. I just don't know if the Democrats are willing, or I don't know if the Democrats look at it as existential as we do.
That's what I'm saying. It's not enough for us, but I think if Joe Biden were to pass a public action tomorrow, this man would be praised amongst the base of the voter base of the Democratic Party.
I agree.
And to me, that is why.
But do you think he's going to do that? I don't think he's going to do that because Biden, I said it the night he got inaugurated. I was like, all Joe Biden has to do is pass this vaccine to the entire country and literally get a relief package.
Yep.
And we'll give him an incomplete on the vaccine. That's a little bit more kind of a overarching.
Doing it. He's ordered one
right.
forever.
We'll see where that goes.
The relief package, right?
On the relief package, he's failing.
Yeah.
He's failing miserably. Right. So even when it's right there for the Democrats to win, right down the middle. Literally, like, he could literally be the most popular president in our lifetime if he just does those two things. Yeah. Like, he could literally start a war in another country tomorrow. As long as he passes those two things, he will cruise to re-election. And again, never underestimate the ability of Democrats to fuck up an easy.
They're terrible.
And this is what gets me so mad. And this is why, like, the whole impeachment thing, to kind of tie a bow around all of it, like the impeachment thing, why I was so anti it, because again, it's like, is this really important in the grand scheme of things? Like, we literally have a pandemic right now. The man's already out of office. You defeated him at the ballot box. Okay. We can have a separate discussion about defeating him in 2024, even if we even get to a 2024 or whatever. That's a separate argument. And yes, I agree with you. If this was January 2019, 2018, whatever, I think that, yes, you definitely have to impeach him. And definitely, I said on this show, the Ukraine stuff was nothing compared to what he did on January 6th. Like, that is what they should have impeached him at that point, right? But I feel like at that point, on January 6th, 2021, we were already far past the point. He was going to be out of office in 13 days, I believe. You almost have to just say, you know what? Just get him out of office, and then because we have other pressing needs. Like right now, again, the stimulus fight.
Yeah, but we can do both, right? Why can't we do both?
Democrats have proven they can't do both. That's the problem. Like, Josh, you give them more credit than I do. Like, they have not proven that they can do both. They can't walk and chew gum at the same time. These motherfuckers will trip on themselves consistently.
And I will concede to the fact that the whole impeachment thing, like even with me supporting it, is in a way virtue signaling, because if I'm a senator and I'm voting to go forward with it, it is kind of virtue signaling because I know that it's not going to get, you're not going to get convicted. So at the end of the day, like, why am I doing it? And I think that this is going to sound horrible, but like, I do think the virtue signal was worth it because of the severity of the crime. You cannot have.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. And I'm not disagreeing with you one iota.
You have to show some sort of, we try to hold this man responsible. And to me,
absolutely.
That's it. Now you can argue like they should be doing other things. And I agree. Like, there are millions of people right now who don't have a job, who don't have healthcare, and who need that check right away. And that is very effing important. We should get on that immediately. But I mean, like I said, like, maybe it's on me for expecting so much out of the Democrats to walk and chew gum at the same time. But like, you're perfectly capable of going to an impeachment hearing and then going back into your office and saying, okay, this is what I want in the relief bill. Like, that's your fucking job.
Right. But this is, and I'll close with this. It's like, you're not wrong. I'm 100% with you on that. Like, I can't debate you. You're absolutely right. Like, yes, he did need to be held accountable. The problem is that I don't trust the Democrats to hold him accountable because of Republicans, because of these senators. Like, you're never going to convert. Okay, what? Like, I think 7 or 10 actually, they got 10 senators to actually flip on him, which is not nearly enough. Like, at the end of the day, sometimes you have to know which hill to die on. And you have to know that, like, hey, this is on the morals. Yes, it's a worthwhile investment and it's something that we should do. But at the end of the day, what are you really accomplishing? If you're really not going to sway Republicans and you're not going to convince these senators to convict him, then what is the point? You're literally wasting taxpayer dollars that honestly could go to other aspects and to other causes on an impeachment for a guy that's not there. And honestly, I would say that it's not even virtue signaling. They're so terrified of Trump running in 2024 that they almost did this almost to keep him from running in 2024. Like, they feel like, attempt. Right, exactly. Which is, and I guess I saw through the bullshit. So that's what made me even more like, they're just doing this because they don't want him to run in 2024, which is, I commend them. Obviously I do. Right. But again, it's like, you're not going to win. You're not winning. Like, so it's like, what's the point? You're better off fighting the fight you can win than fighting this fight that's going to lead you to nowhere. Right. That's it. So, in the roundabout way, we got around to the whole impeachment thing. We kind of veered off in some different directions, but yeah, it's no shock, no surprise that, you know, I think you also felt that at the end of the day, he wasn't going to get convicted.
Yeah, I wasn't like crossing my fingers like, and I wanted to get back. Remember, like, the whole Mueller thing was going on, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's Mueller time!" Like, if you didn't learn from that,
if you didn't learn from the Mueller report, then it's yeah. I have no words for you. But again, there's a lot of that MSNBC crowd that's like, "Oh, Rachel Maddow," you know.
That's a large part of the Democratic base. Like, that's the thing. That's what. And we don't think we're talking in circles at this point, where it's kind of like, I don't think the Democratic base is as progressive as you think it is.
To your point, you know what angered the fuck out of me like a couple weeks ago? I never have Morning Joe on, like, never, right? But I had it for some reason. I turned on my YouTube TV one morning, and it's on MSNBC for some reason. So Morning Joe's on, and I'm literally listening to Joe Scarborough basically professing why we need more populist policies, especially from the left perspective. Like, he's saying, oh yeah, it's time for this country to accept that we have some, like, capitalism is the system in this country.
Joe
Scarborough. Yes.
Okay.
Like, he's advocating Medicare for all and all these other things. And I'm like,
is there a
where was this during the elections? So see, like, they know that this is popular, but they know that they don't want this to actually get too, it's like, we'll give you enough sugar to whet your appetite, but we're not going to let you have a full diet on this shit, because they know that if they do, then the base is completely turned on it, and then you will have this fight on the Senate floor. Like, oh no, Medicare for all is actually a thing. And this is how you know Medicare for all is popular. Like, every single election where Democrats ran and they were for Medicare for all, and especially in swing districts, they won every single election.
Did they?
I think look it up. Yeah, they looked it up. They're like, no, that's why like when Abigail Spanberger or whatever, she went on her little rant that like, oh, you can't run on defund the police and like these liberal.
It does hurt them in some states, like electorally. I know it does.
Yeah, the defund the police. See, but that's more of a nuanced discussion than like, you know, because there's a lot of people that like look at framing of like defund the police. What are you going to do with this money? What do you mean? What do you mean that you're going to take $100 million from the police? Like, yeah, you mean to tell me that like the Seattle PD needs $330 million? Like they can't do the job with $200 million?
The crazy thing about defund the police is that it's actually beneficial for police. Like I can make the argument it's pro police.
It is, but again, but even that in itself is a culture war aspect, right? Because we're like, you know, if you say one thing that's critical about the police, you're anti-police, you're an anarchist, right? Like, oh, God forbid, like if you honestly aren't walking around with a hard on for police, you're just essentially like this maverick Antifa loving, you know, anarchist, which is no, like we can have a nuanced discussion about policing in this country and like really how to better and more efficiently police in this country, but they don't have that conversation again because even that it's a culture war. So
I just looked up the claim of Medicare for all supporters winning swing districts, and PolitiFact says that it's mostly true. So I will grant you that point.
So again, I don't know, man. If that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what will. Again, and I'm not saying you're wrong. Like, should it be more of a priority as far as a base? But I feel like a lot of Democrats just kind of feel like, oh, well, they know Pelosi's anti it. They know Biden's anti it. So they just kind of feel like
the deal should be a priority because that incorporates healthcare. The Green New Deal incorporates everything.
It does.
I think we talk a lot about Medicare for all because I think it's like easier to understand, and the Green New Deal just sounds intimidating to some people.
Mm-hmm.
But if people just took the time, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes to understand like the resolution that is the Green New Deal, you realize that it's just a path going forward with healthcare for everybody, with jobs guarantees and things like that, and it encompasses everything. So for me, I do want Medicare for all, but I would like to change our focus, like the main thing, to be the Green New Deal, because I feel like as progressives, for whatever reason, Medicare for all is like the first thing we start talking about, you know, which is cool, which is great. But for me, the Green New Deal encompasses everything. So I
agree, absolutely, and I also think that it's like there's a segment, and we'll end on this, but I feel like there's a segment of liberals in the Democratic Party that they don't have that fighting spirit. And I want to get back to that. Like, I don't think they have that fighting spirit in the sense like we do, progressives do, right?
There's a lot in common with them though, like that. And I think you have more hope than I do with that. I don't know if I have as much in common with a moderate Democrat.
No, I don't. I don't think we have I don't think we have a lot of it. That's what I'm saying. Like, we don't, like, they're pretty much like, oh, well, Nancy Pelosi's not going to fight for it and she's going to veto it. And so is Joe Biden. So what's the point of fighting for it? Right. They almost take that approach, while the left's like, no, this is real. This is important. This is something that is worth fighting for. And that we should force a vote. We should do this. We should do but you have a large segment of the Democrats that are, again, I also feel like this current inclination of Democrats right now, they're back to brunch crowd. They're happy that the big bad villain is gone. And there's a honeymoon period right now. But eventually 6, 7, I think the post-Trump era lasts you maybe like 8 to 12 months, but by next year, it's like, you can't keep bringing up Trump anymore. He's gone.
Right.
What are you going to do now? Like, we'll give you a honeymoon period, but now you're going to have to actually deliver. Right. And I would even argue it's coming sooner than that, but there's going to come a point where Democrats can't just rest on, oh, well, Trump's gone, so be happy. No, that's not going to be enough anymore. They better.
We got the House and Senate for 2 years, and we know what happened with Obama for 2 years. Didn't do shit.
Mm-hmm. So
good luck for them.
Well, let's move on to things that make us happier, because I think we could both agree that politics just stress us out on multiple levels. But quarterback carousel 2021. It's a lot going on in the quarterback.
There's a lot of quarterbacks available, man.
Jesus Christ! I mean, we talked about Stafford and Goff. Now you're hearing, obviously, Deshaun Watson's been floating out there now for a few weeks, and then now all of a sudden this week, literally post Super Bowl, Russell Wilson thrust himself into the quarterback conversation like, motherfucker, I'm here. Like, now you got Russell Wilson allegedly, maybe. full disclosure, I don't think Russell Wilson's going anywhere, and I honestly don't even believe Deshaun Watson's getting traded. But
I don't think most of them are going anywhere, man. To be honest with you,
I don't.
Watts is going somewhere, and
it's interesting. It's interesting to talk about. It's fun to talk about, but I don't think. But let's talk about it.
Okay.
Russell Wilson's comments this week. Were you shocked by them? Surprised? Were you surprised how open he was about it? Like, would psychoanalyze him for me for a second?
Russ isn't typically the type of person to come out and say something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he has been running for his life, but I think at some point, his play started to deteriorate. And after a while, when your play deteriorates and you kind of don't think it's your fault, you might say something. So just from a personal standpoint, I think I can understand why he said something. Russ to me has kind of underperformed a little bit. He got off to a huge start.
Yeah.
Seasons. Like, he's had a lot of underwhelming games. This is a point that you've made time and time again on the podcast. I'm just kind of restating it because I agree with it. And I think he knows that. And I think people are starting to realize that. And not that he's trying to shift blame, but he, wants people to know that, hey, listen, my situation isn't the best here. And I'm aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's going anywhere. I just think he's putting a little pressure on the Seahawks to protect him. And that's that. I'm surprised to come out loud, though, because typically I'd picture him as someone who would say something behind closed doors.
I'm shocked. I'm not shocked, but I'm surprised on how kind of open he was about it. I mean, he basically put it on the organization like, hey, they got to provide me more help. And he's not wrong. Like, their offensive line has not been great, but I wouldn't say it's because they haven't tried to, like, they did go out and get you Dwayne Brown. I mean, you can't sit there and say like the organization is just basically giving you a bunch of stiffs.
Right.
Like, they did go out and get you a borderline all pro, Pro Bowl caliber tackle. Like, they have tried to do some things, right? Now, has that worked? We can obviously debate as far as whether it's worked or not, but he's right in that two things can be true. Yes, the offensive line, they need to improve the offensive line, and they need to do some things to improve the offensive line. And it also can be true that I think Russell Wilson's trying to deflect a little bit here. Like, I think he's trying to take the blame off himself, because I've been very critical of him. Like, this is a guy that, he has got a lot of money, and he's had a lot of underwhelming performances, especially in big spots. Again, Russell Wilson, he'll play 12 consecutive games where he's great, and he'll have that 13th game where where it's a clunker, and you're just like, is this the same Russell Wilson? Like, why?
But it's a couple games in a row, man. Honestly.
But it's not like Jared Goff level where it's like, it's just totally stark, the differences in performance. But it's just like, he just will make a throw that you're just like,
what?
Why?
Yeah.
Or he'll make a play or he'll hold on to the football too long. Like, so I do think that, and being here in Seahawk country, I think his comments rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. A lot of Seahawk fans were kind of rubbed the wrong way about it. Like, first of all, they looked at it as, hey, this guy signed a contract, 2 years ago. And, all he said was, I love it here. This is my home. Go Hawks, yada, yada, yada. And now all of a sudden, and the other aspect that I find interesting in this too is like, do you remember last year? I think it was like late 2019, early 20. Remember? It was definitely last year. I think it was like pre-COVID, where there was like a lot of rumors that Sierra was trying to angle Russell to go to like a bigger market. There was a lot of talks like maybe the Giants would get involved in getting a trade for Russell Wilson.
The Giants.
Right. Remember that? Like, I don't misremember that, right? Like, it was like for 5 minutes, right? But there was like, at least, I'm a guy that believes that where there's smoke, there's fire. Like, I don't think this is an accident now, especially like now that you're hearing this 2 years in a row where it's like, I'm someone that believes there's more there than meets the eye. I do think that there's an element of Sierra here. Like, maybe she's angling him for maybe going to a bigger market, bigger locale. Again, it's not going to happen. I get it.
Right.
But I think it is worth discussing. And I think it is interesting to see. And the other thing about this too that I find interesting is that you're seeing these quarterbacks are trying to take more ownership of their careers. You're starting to see these quarterbacks that are not just going to sit back and just take like, oh, hey, I am star quarterback and I'm just going to cash my check and shut the hell up and play. I think you're seeing, and with Deshaun Watson, even Aaron Rodgers to a point, now Russell Wilson, you're seeing that these quarterbacks are not just going to go along to get along. That they're going to sit here and say, hey, I'm the guy here. I'm the face of the franchise. I think that you should have me in mind when you're in these decisions.
Right.
To a point, right? I think that we can all agree to a point. So I did find that whole situation interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. He's not going anywhere, though. I mean, there's nothing.
No, I don't think.
Where there's smoke, there's fire, but I can't see the Seahawks.
No. And what I mean by that is the more on the Sierra aspect of it, not the Seahawks. Like, they're not trading him. They're not trading him. He's the franchise. I mean, he is the Seahawks. He's not. They're not. You're basically starting over if you trade Russell Wilson. So I mean, at that point, you're literally waving the white flag and starting over because there's nothing that you would get that's even comparable to Russell Wilson. Like, you can't even guarantee that you're getting, unless you're getting like a Trevor Lawrence in the draft, you're not getting anything comparable that would even equate to what the value of Russell Wilson. So
the Jets, can you imagine?
I mean, hey, I'd sign up for it, but Joe Douglas is not doing it. You just know that, right? So yeah, it's fodder. The one thing I will say though, it does annoy me when these quarterbacks, critique the organization like, oh, I need more help. And this has been one of my biggest pet peeves since I've been doing this show over 5 years. Like, my problem with these quarterbacks is you have a hard cap sport.
Yeah.
Like, you have a sport that's a hard cap. Like, football is designed, and before people go jump off a bridge and complain about that, like, this is why this sport works, because salaries are controlled. You cannot have, if that's the case, the Dallas Cowboys would pay every single fucking free agent and every single player known to mankind. You have a salary cap. You have a structure. You can't have one person in the salary cap making 20% of the cap, 20 to 25% of the cap. And then also, hey, by the way, quarterbacks love to take the money. Pay me.
Give me help. Why can't you give me help?
Yeah, pay me. I remember when Drew Brees got paid. The last big contract he signed was a few years ago. And then he complained when they traded Alex Mack and they got rid of Jimmy Graham. And it's like, Drew, you're making $30 million. You're making 20% of the cap. You can't make 20% of the cap and then complain, oh, give me an all-pro wide receiver. Give me an all-pro tight end. Oh, by the way, give me some linemen. And oh, by the way, yeah, the defense sucks. Give me some pass rushers. Like, you can't have it both ways. You can't say, oh, yeah, I want to make $40 million. I got to get mine. I got to get my bag, right? I got to do me. But then also say, yeah, I want this guy, that guy, re-sign this guy, re-sign that guy, re-sign this guy. Like, you can't have it both ways.
Right.
So that's my issue with quarterbacks and this whole, this whole thing. And plus the Seahawks, go back to the Russell Wilson thing. Like, I don't think the Seahawks have done a bad, the only thing you could kind of critique the Seahawks is that maybe the defense, they haven't focused as much on the defense as they probably
should. I think they tried.
And they tried with the Jamal Adams trade.
And Jamal Adams,
and then, you just shut me up. Like, yeah, it's not for lack of effort or lack of trying. Like, the Texans have literally been incompetent, and we'll get to them in a second. Like,
honestly, the Seahawks, the second half of the season, the defense was balling, man.
Which is the ironic thing about this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, the Texans, there's no defending the Texans. The Texans have been fucking incompetent. Like, what they've done has been criminal, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think that what the Seahawks has done has been incompetence. Like, they've tried to improve the offensive line. It didn't work. They literally traded 2 first-round picks for Jamal Adams. So they've been trying to improve the defense since the Legion of Boom days. So I don't know what else you really, if you're Russell Wilson, I don't know what else you want them to do. Here's the thing for Russell Wilson. How about you play better against the Rams?
Right.
How about that?
I think you're right in the sense where he's just kind of trying to deflect blame. I mean, I said earlier that I don't know if he is, but maybe he is a little bit.
It felt kind of whiny. It felt like he was trying to deflect blame a little bit, which is kind of rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So it's going to be interesting. It's good fodder. It's worth talking about. But at the end of the day, I think you and I both agree it's much to do about it. We won't even be
talking about this week one. We're not going to be talking about this.
No. And also, I think a win for Russell Wilson is that they got Schottenheimer the hell out of there. I mean, he's so bad. Jesus Christ. He's so bad.
What happens? I mean, you got one of the best receivers in the league right now. They need a running back. Chris Carson's always kind of banged up, but he has weapons.
They haven't had a good running game in a long while since Marshawn.
Carson's decent.
Carson's okay, but you can win with him. But again, I think the issues with the running game has been mostly the offensive line related. They just can't block for the running game, and then Carson's always hurt, which is another issue.
You got an old world receiver right now, man.
I mean, they've got great they got great wide receivers, DK and
Tyler Lockett.
So yeah, the Seahawks are not that far away, man. He just needs to play better. That's the issue that I have with Russell Wilson. He just needs to play better.
Yeah.
If he plays, I mean, in that second half swoon, I mean, 2 of those games, if he plays better, who knows? Maybe the Seahawks get home field advantage, and it's a different
the offense in the first half and the defense in the second half of the season, and just kind of
even just by a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe it's the Seahawks in Seattle in that game against the Bucks, and
right.
Who knows? Maybe it's a different. Who knows? Maybe it's a different game. You know what I mean? Who knows? Right? We'll never know. So, Deshaun Watson, the ever ongoing saga of the Texans and Deshaun Watson. I guess this week now we were at the whole JJ Watt release. And people are actually surprised that JJ Watt got released. I'm like, this has actually been in the works now for a while. Like, yeah, this has been kind of a long time coming. As far as the Deshaun Watson thing, the Texans are remaining steadfast. They're not going to trade him, which from a Texans perspective, I don't blame them. You can't replace him. Right. You trade a 25-year-old all pro caliber quarterback that has once in a generation like skills. You're not trading that guy. Like you're going to do whatever you have to do to keep that guy in your building.
Right.
Because you can't replace, even if the Jets gave you the number 2 pick and like literally every draft pick they have for the next 10 years, there's no guarantee that you're getting a Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee. Like as a Jet fan, I pray that Zach Wilson has as much talent in his pinky finger that Deshaun Watson has. Right? Like you just pray that he can even live up to like even an inch of what Deshaun Watson can.
Are the Jets going with Zach?
There's a lot of rumors that they're going with Zach Wilson. That Darnold's
really?
Well, that's the other thing about the quarterback carousel. Darnold is getting a lot of love. There's a lot of teams lining up to try to get. I mean, the Jets.
I like Sam, man.
We've been through this discussion now already that we both like Sam Darnold and we both think that he's a guy that can flourish somewhere else. But I don't blame the Jets for trading him though.
Him in the Shanahan offense, like just to give it a go.
But you can't blame the Jets for trading him. He's been there 3 years. And the other thing about this is the football business aspect of this too. It's like the Jets, let's say Sam Darnold goes out there and in LaFleur's offense, Matt LaFleur's brother's offense, Mike LaFleur, he flourishes this season. Now you're in a situation where you have to pay Sam Darnold not top dollar, but you have to pay him. You have to pay him Tannehill money at least, right? Like now you're in a situation where you 4 for like 68 or 4 for 70.
Yeah, but I mean that's a bargain for a starting quarterback that's going to perform the way
it is. But you're not in a situation. But now you've lost your flexibility from a standpoint of like the best way to build a team in the NFL in 2021 NFL is to have a young superstar quarterback who's on a rookie deal, and you can build all areas of your team around them. Because once that guy starts making big money, you're dead, right? Yeah. You're in a situation with Russell Wilson where you're paying this guy $40 million and he's taking 25% of your cap, and now you're in a situation where you're going to have to cut a Quinnen Williams because you can't re-sign him too, or you're going to have to cut this guy or that guy. Right. So you can't.
Tannehill 4 years, $118 million.
Was it that much? Jesus, I saw he probably wouldn't get that much, but the problem is like, even if you picked up his 5th year option, right, and you told him, the next 2 years you basically have to sing for your supper. What if he balls out for the next 2 years? Then after 2 years, you're in a situation where you're not paying him Aaron Rodgers money or Deshaun Watson money, but you're paying him market value.
But as a Jet fan, if it gets to that point, aren't you happy?
I'm happy. I'm happy to
have a quarterback.
This is what I'm scared of. I'm scared that, yes, to your point. Yes, I would be happy if Sam Darnold becomes the Sam Darnold that I think every Jet fan anticipated he'd become, whether it happened year 1 or year 4, who gives a fuck? Right. The problem is though, what if it doesn't happen? So now you have this new coach, Robert Saleh, who has gotten rave reviews and everybody likes. You've got Matt LaFleur's brother in the building. You have a good coaching tree, a good coaching staff that you've brought in, right? That everybody feels competent, right? I mean, but that's not saying much because we have Adam Gase and Darryl Loggins. I mean, me and you are an upgrade in that department compared to these fucking morons. But now you're in a situation where you have the number 2 pick and you don't go quarterback or you trade out of that, and Sam Darnold has a so-so year, or he, again, a similar Sam Darnold year where he shows some shines, kind of shows that he isn't the guy. Now you've set yourself back another year. And who knows, maybe even if next year you play better, right? And you're 7-9, now you're in a situation where you can't really draft a quarterback next year, right? And because you know, who knows, maybe Zach Wilson's better than a quarterback that you'll get next year. From all talks, this quarterback class is well regarded compared to following previous years and then next year. So now you're in a situation where it's like, did you miss the boat by not just, you know what I mean? And it's a what if game. It's playing it out. Obviously, we don't know. I don't think you're surprised if Sam Darnold comes out next year and balls out under Mike LaFleur. But I also wouldn't be surprised if Sam Darnold, like, what if Sam Darnold is who he is? Like, what if Sam Darnold is?
Nothing would surprise you next year with Sam Darnold. He could fall flat on his face and it wouldn't surprise me, and he could ball out and it wouldn't surprise me.
Exactly. And that's what I think scares me and scares a lot of Jet fans. And it's like, are we willing to go another year with this guy and possibly face the option that he just isn't the guy? And now you've lost out on a Zach Wilson. Now you've lost out on a Justin Fields or a Trey Lance.
Assuming they're going to be good.
Right. Assuming. Because it's all an assumption. Who the hell knows? I mean, hell, even who the hell knows about Trevor Lawrence? I mean, we can sit here and say Trevor Lawrence is going to be God at the quarterback position, but, you know, 1 week into training camp, he tears his shoulder off his fucking bone and he's done, right? Like, so who the hell knows? Nobody knows with these quarterbacks, right? So yeah, I think that's the fear with the Jets. So, but back to the Deshaun Watson situation. If you're the Texans, you can't let that guy out of the building. I mean, you just can't, because I mean, you do everything. Apparently, from everything you read, with following McClain and the Houston Chronicle guy that's basically in the weeds on the whole Houston Texans organization, the biggest beef with Deshaun Watson is him and this guy Easterly, the VP of football ops there in Houston. Him and Deshaun just don't get along. Like, Deshaun thinks he's an idiot. And I'm like, if that's the guy that's keeping you from reconciling with Deshaun Watson,
get rid of him.
Get rid of him. Like, whatever the fuck you got to do. I don't care. I don't care if he's dating your daughter. If you're the owner, like, get rid of him. You can't lose to Deshaun Watson, because that's your franchise. I mean, you're done as a franchise if you lose to Deshaun Watson. I mean, what's the point? You might as well fold up shop. So
you're the Texans. It's not like anyone's gonna be craving to go to the Texans,
right? And again, there's no guarantee that Zach Wilson is going to be Deshaun Watson. I mean, again, you pray that Zach Wilson becomes a Deshaun Watson. I mean, you pray, right? So, but the interesting thing is JJ Watt. So where do you think JJ Watt lands? Because I think he's still a guy that can impact the team, the right team too.
He's going to go to a team that's, I don't know what team specifically, but I can't see him signing with a team that's not a contender in some sort of, like,
gun to your head. Cowboys.
Stays in Texas.
Interesting.
Here's the one thing about JJ. JJ loves the spotlight.
Yeah, he does.
Craves the spotlight.
Yeah, he does. They all do.
I think he would take significantly less to play for the Cowboys.
The Cowboys situation is so dysfunctional right now that I don't think he would go there necessarily, because it's not like they're a guarantee to win next year, right? Like, they're not like set in stone. I mean, even with Dak coming back next year, would it surprise you if that team finishes 8-8 again? I mein, it's the Cowboys, right? I mean, they're if you put 8-8 in a dictionary, the Cowboys would be
right next to Justice.
So they're right. So they're not a guarantee to be a big time winning team next year. I mean, they have the talent, but there's no guarantee, right? Especially with McCarthy.
If Dak comes back and he's back, I like him. Yeah, McCarthy too is a wild card. You're right about that, actually. I didn't think about that.
But see, I think the Steelers, his brother, it's a natural fit. You know, I think he'd take less money to go to the Steelers.
Prominent franchise. Mike Tomlin's, that's his type of coach, probably.
Yeah, I think the Steelers. I think there's three teams that logistically make sense for me. Like, I think the Steelers. I think 49ers.
Niners make sense.
And I think the Chiefs.
You think the Chiefs? What's Chiefs cap like?
If he's just in ring chase mode, like if he's just like, hey, I've made my money, I'm just in ring chase mode, then I think the Chiefs make sense. If he's not that, like if he's still trying to get a payday out of it, then I think that he could probably. I think that it kind of rules out because I think the Chiefs are pretty capped out, right? I would think.
But there are teams like the Packers, for instance, could use them.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams. Like, I mean, the Bills obviously have been the most vocal. I mean, you got Diggs out here campaigning for him, and you got a lot of guys campaigning for him. So I think Buffalo's also. I think I can see Buffalo. I can see him thinking Buffalo's like right at the cusp of being like a Super Bowl team. But I mean, honestly though, I think the Steelers, man. I think the Steelers are a sneaky pick to sign him. His brother's there. You know,
with you now because this is the first conversation I had with it, so I don't know what I thought. I think the Cowboys are always a possibility because they're the freaking Cowboys. Steelers makes absolutely a lot of sense, and just going through the teams in my head, the Rolodex, I think the Packers make sense. Him and Kenny Clark, and just fucking.
Packers make sense too. Packers make sense.
Like, let's be honest, the Packers should have beat the Bucs. They should have been the NFC representative in the Super Bowl. They're not far away. I don't know how toxic that relationship is. You bring up
the Bucs again. If he's just in ring chase mode,
why not? Yeah.
If he's just in ring chase mode and Shaq Barrett's a free agent, maybe they can sign him. And stranger thing, right. I think JJ Watt's going to be interesting. He's going to be an interesting name to watch.
I don't know how much. I don't even know how much money he would demand. Like that's the thing in my head. I'm trying to think of like what kind of contract he would get, and I don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know because he's such an interesting position. Because how old is JJ Watt?
JJ Watt age. Let's look it up. He's 31.
31. He's actually younger than I thought because I thought he was like 33, 34. He's actually younger. So JJ Watt, he's still got 2-3 years left of like good football. I mean, he's not what he was, but he's still really good. And
he's 26. Yeah, he's good.
He's still got
liability though, injury wise. Like he's always hurt.
But see, that's why I think he's in like ring chase mode though. Like that's why I think he's like in a situation where like I think he would see it as like, hey, I've made my money. I don't need to go really anywhere else to do much of anything. I just can kind of just sit back, get my sacks, play on a good team with a great quarterback and a great quarterback that actually has an organization that protects that great quarterback, like unlike Deshaun. Sure. And you're in a situation there. So I don't know.
My power rankings are going to be Steelers. I think you convinced me with that one. Mm-hmm. Steelers, Cowboys, Bucks, Packers.
The only thing about the Steelers, the only thing I would say about my pick is that the Steelers are not a big free agency team. Like they're just notoriously, they just don't really play in those free agent waters. So that was to be the only thing that, because I can't even remember the last like big time free agent the Steelers signed.
Yeah. I mean, they got Ebron last year.
They work around the margins, like little
trade for Fitzpatrick. They need the trade for Fitzpatrick. It's not free
that was more of like a drafting type of thing, like a more of a Steelers thinking about the future type of thing. Oh my God, they hit on that. Jesus Christ! I mean, I said it at the time. I'm like, what is Miami doing? I mean,
But the Steelers, my perception of the Steelers, like it's like a culture, right? It's like you have to fit into,
and he fits that culture.
1,000%.
He fits that culture. The only thing I can, like I said, the only thing is the Steelers are not a big free agency spender, so they're not a team that just goes out and gets free agency guys.
I wonder what kind of money he's going to command. Like that's for me. If I am a GM, I don't know how many years I would want to sign JJ Watt for, and at how much I would want to. So it's going to be very interesting.
2 years. I wouldn't want to sign him for more than 2 years.
Max. But like for me, I'd just rather have him on a 1-year deal.
I think he would want a little bit more security than that. And we're just guessing. We're guessing. Who the fuck knows? Neither one of us know JJ Watt.
This is a conversation about us just kind of like throwing shit out there. Like
right.
I don't know.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I think he's going to be one of the interesting names to follow as this offseason takes shape. It's going to be a fun NFL offseason because there's a lot of moving pieces and storylines. Before we wrap up, Carson Wentz, is he ever getting traded?
There's got to be a team somewhere, man. There's got to be a team that wants him.
The Eagles really got to be asking for the fucking moon, though. But I get it, though. I mean, if Matt Stafford got what he got, and Carson Wentz literally was an ACL, whatever it was, away from winning an MVP. Yeah. And people make it sound like Carson Wentz has been like Mark Sanchez the last couple of years. This has really been his only really bad year. He's had pretty good.
Yeah.
He's been pretty good otherwise, even after the injuries. He's never been as good as the MVP or the would-be MVP year, but he's still been pretty good. And he got the Steelers. I mean, they were a functioning relationship quarterback there wise, every year, but this year. So, you know, I think that everybody's willing to like write off Carson Wentz. Right.
I mean, the one situation, it's very interesting because I think once they won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles, it was over.
It was done for him. Yeah, it was done. And you and I both said that. I mean, you can't. How do you win that locker room over? I mean, the guy that literally won
and then you start doing too much. You start playing honestly for yourself at that point. You're not playing to win, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. You start recognizing the situation for what it is, and then you're by yourself at that point. And I think that he felt like he was a man on an island the whole time in Philadelphia.
Looking back, and obviously obviously at the time they didn't have the benefit of hindsight, right? So it's an unfair question. But looking back, if we could just rewind the clock back to what 2017, right? Was that 2018 Super Bowl? So June or January of 2018. If you're the Eagles, I know Wentz is hurt,
right?
But do you just sell high on Wentz?
Yeah, hindsight's 2020, but yeah, you do
because you would have never.
You just accomplished what every organization wants to accomplish without him.
Yeah,
but I mean, at the same time, you're thinking, hey, man, imagine what we can do when Wentz gets back. We just
right. That's why it's a little bit of an unfair question because again, benefit of hindsight, obviously. No,
he was coming.
I don't think any Eagle. Yeah, I don't think any Eagle fan would have predicted what had happened just, right. 2 years later. So it's a little bit of an unfair question. But yeah, the Carson Wentz thing is interesting too because, yeah, he's still a guy. I still think he's a guy that has ability and can win big, you know, and you know he's going to have a chip on his shoulder because of everything that happened in Philly. So I still think the guy can win. And I think he could be a very good quarterback in the right situation. Like to me, the Colts is just perfect for him.
Why not? I mean, he's from North Dakota, so like he's gonna be perfectly fine in Indianapolis. It's the same type of vibe, same type of small town.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have the team already there for him to win.
His old OC, like it's just perfect there. It's just perfect. That's all they're missing. I would argue, and maybe I'm higher on Carson Wentz than a lot of people are. That it just feels like I'm a Carson Wentz defender. Like I still like Carson. I like Wentz too. Like to me, I argue right now, if you put Carson Wentz on the Colts last year, they beat the Bills. They probably get to an AFC Championship game.
Right.
Without a doubt in my mind.
If it's the Wentz that you think he could be.
Right. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. All right, let's wrap up with one. I want to get your take on this. The Dallas Mavericks situation there. To play the anthem or to not play the anthem. Mark Cuban coming out this week, and basically out of nowhere, really, because apparently they weren't playing it already,
right,
for the totality of the season. And I think he just kind of came out and fully said, we're not playing the anthem going forward for the rest of the season and beyond. And then obviously Adam Silver comes out and basically says, no, NBA teams are required to play the anthem. So a lot of people now are mad at Adam Silver and the NBA and blah, blah, blah. I thought you guys were the woke league. Where do you stand on this whole thing? Is this much to do about nothing, or like where are you on it?
I think it's highly disappointing because it's showing, it's a pattern of behavior that I'm seeing from the NBA that I don't like. It's a pattern of bad decisions. It's a pattern of kind of catering to, what I think is not their demographic. First of all, I mean, people who are very gun-ho about you must stand for the anthem and we must play it are people who don't really watch the NBA to begin with. I'm not saying there aren't people like that who do watch the NBA. Your child's in there. Hello. Yeah, I mean, just mixed with it's kind of like a thing where it's like things are coming together where it's like, okay, the COVID thing, I think they messed up on the All-Star game decision, and now the National Anthem thing. I think if this was an isolated thing, I wouldn't really care too much. But all these decisions that Adam Silver and the NBA are making, they seem kind of regressive. And it's very disappointing because I've always been proud of the NBA and their progressive policies and their progressive way of thinking. And it's just kind of like, why are we starting to cater to regressive policies and a regressive way of thinking? It doesn't make any sense to me. I think they're definitely afraid of losing more money than they're already losing this year due to the pandemic. You know, you don't have fans in the stands. And they don't want to risk losing any type of revenue with any type of controversy. And it's just really obvious. And they're sacrificing their, I don't want to say progressive values because it's hard to assign ethics and value to to a league. Yeah. But, you know, they've lost all the stock that I feel like they've built up. You know, it's the national anthem. To me, personally, I actually wouldn't hear how you feel as a vet because like you served, But for me, like the national anthem, the flag, to me, it's like, it was never really a big deal to me. Like, it's so for me, like having them make me stand for it is not a big deal. To play it is not a big deal, but not to play it's not a big deal either. Like, I don't care either way. But to me, it shows that you're catering to a certain demographic that doesn't even watch your freaking product. So it's just disappointing.
Yeah. So I'll take the second question first. I'm like you. I've never really cared, and even as a vet, I've never
really.
It's just, it is what it is. It's there. I mean, it's honestly like the anthem for me became like, I never even really noticed that they played the anthem in front of us, like until like after 9/11. Remember when we went to that like period where we were like extra patriotic after 9/11, right. like America, fuck yeah, right. Cocks hard, rocks, like just that real like patriotic American xenophobia attitude that was just like reinvigorated after 9/11. So like I never really like paid attention to the anthem. Like and obviously I was younger then, but even now as an adult, even before I joined the army, it was never one. And even after the army, like, yeah, I get the pomp and circumstance and, whatever. And that doesn't mean like I'm un-American. You're not, obviously. I'm right. That doesn't mean that. It's just like, if you play it, the issue, this is what pisses me off so bad, right? It's like, it's become an anthem issue and not the issue that led to Kaepernick kneeling in the first place. Like it's right. It was never about the anthem. The anthem was just the means to an end. It's like they're still making it the anthem. I don't give a fuck if you play the anthem. Deal with the inequalities and the injustices going on in people of color in this country. That is the issue. Right. I don't care if you play the flag. You can play the Canadian anthem. You can play the Puerto Rican pride song. I mean, I don't give a fuck what you play. You can play 100% by Big Pun. I don't care. Like,
yeah, but they're
the anthem isn't, but because again, they're the idiots and the morons that made it an anthem issue. Because again, it's back to my original. I love how we're just tying everything in together. Back again to the culture war, because they know they have no real answer to the substance, so they just deflect. But yeah, it's the anthem. See, they're un-Americans. They're the same folks. They're Antifa. No, the guy literally, like Colin Kaepernick literally just said, I just want my people to not be beaten and tased and shot by the police, by the people that are paid to protect us. Like, that's it. Like, that's it. Just deal with that. Like, and the anthem thing would have just literally fallen apart. But instead, they know they don't have any answer. They know they don't have anything to say about the substance. So they make it about this like culture, this nebulous thing that isn't a thing, because they know that that's something where they can actually deflect attention to and actually divide instead of actually dealing with the issues. Right. So as far as the anthem goes, I could care one way or another if you play it or don't play it. I'm almost at the point now where it's just like either you play it or you don't play it. Who cares? I don't care one way or another.
I don't care one way or the other. I just think it's very disappointing to see the NBA cater to that mindset.
That's where I disagree with you, because you have always maintained, and I'm not just attacking you, but whatever. Like a lot of folks have given the NBA a lot of credit for like their wokeness. I'm one of those. A lot of credit for their wokeness. And I've always looked at the NBA's wokeness as convenient wokeness. It's like wokeness out of convenience.
Justin Timberlake wokeness.
Right. It's like, yeah, built on African history. You can put that on a shirt and you could put that on a slogan. And, yeah, first of all, the NBA is not stupid. They know their league is like 80%, 90% black. So of course it's easier for them to be pro-black on a lot of these issues because they know they're not stupid. They know this, right? Like, it's like, it's just common sense. But I think the NBA exposed themselves on the whole China thing. Like, they exposed themselves to me. I was harder on the China thing than you were. I just felt like the China thing was an eye-opening thing because the NBA at the end of the day exposed themselves like, hey, we're going to be woke to a point. But when it starts affecting our bottom line, yeah, we're going to back up. And I think that this flag shit, whether we like it or not, has hurt their bottom line in some respect, because you say that they're appealing to a crowd that isn't a fan of them. I disagree, because there's no real evidence that we don't know if that crowd, like, for all we know, those same gun-toting, you must stand for. We always paint this picture in our head that the crowd that's like, oh, stand for the flag, are just like, You know that mentality
No,
we have.
I
I'm not
get
saying you're doing this. I'm just saying that there's a lot of people make that mistake that like,
to clarify what I'm saying, obviously there's conservatives who like the NBA. Obviously there's conservatives who watch NBA basketball. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if we were to do a pie chart of the demographics, I will confidently state the hypothesis that at least 70% of the pie chart are liberal, progressive people.
And you're probably right. But that is a segment of your audience that you have basically alienated. And the ratings are down. Like, I don't know if you looked at the rate. I mean, the ratings are just a second year in a row. I think they're up. I think they're up from last year, but they're still not at where they want them to be. Right. So like the NBA ratings.
That's sports in general. All sports are like that.
Yeah, that's still sports in general. But I mean, when you're between Turner and ESPN, when you're paying the NBA $11 billion and, you know, your ratings are not where you want them to be.
Right.
You know, now again, whether that has to do solely with the product, whether that has solely to do with Anthem and social justice and whatever, I mean, we'll never know. I'll defer that to the experts that study this shit and make a living out of it. I think the NBA is getting a little gun shy, and it's like, whoa, we don't want to be the fully woke league. Like, we want to be conveniently woke. You know, we'll stand with you on certain stuff. We're the Democratic Party here. Like, we'll make a video with BLM blocks in the background and yay, go Black Lives Matter, but we're not going to go to a march with you. You know, we're not going to go out there and change the crime bill. You know, we're not going to go out there and change the system that, led us to this in the first place. Like, I think the NBA is it's virtuous. It's basically a long-winded answer. Yes, virtuous.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think I got to concede the point to you that, maybe I was a little too, generous with my takes on them being a progressive league. Yeah.
The China thing was eye-opening because it's like, you can't be this league. I said it years ago, and I'll repeat it again. You can't tell me you're the league of tomorrow. You can't tell me you're the league of women officials and Becky Hammond and we left the All-Star game in Carolina because of the bathroom rule and all that. And then you basically throw Maury under the bus as a league. They threw this man under a bus for literally saying, "Hey, I believe in democracy," and Hong Kong. And you literally had James Harden apologizing to the Chinese government. Literally. Like, hey, we don't, I know that guy is upstairs, but we don't stand with him. Fuck him. I apologize to Xi Jinping.
At the end of the day, they're a huge corporation. They're going to do what's best for the bottom dollar.
Exactly. And that's what I want people to understand. They're going to do what's best for the bottom line. The NBA is no different than Amazon. They're no different than Ford. No different than any other multi-billion-dollar corporation. They're going to do what's best for the bottom line.
What to rebut that statement? I mean, it takes some type of guts to put Black Lives Matter in the middle.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not trying to be too cynical. Like, I get it. Look, I approve of what the NBA is doing, but you can't do that and then tell me, hey, I'm not going to take a stand on, because it wouldn't have been, to me, if I'm the NBA, fuck that extra five. And I know it's easy for me to say, I'm nobody here in Tacoma, right? Like, it's easy for me to say, say fuck China and the $500 million. Like, yeah, that's not my money, right? But if I'm the NBA, I'm like, no, we're an American company. Like, the perfect way. Why didn't anybody in the NBA say, look, while Daryl Morey doesn't speak for the entirety of the NBA, and while we don't want to get involved with such a nuanced and complex issue with the issue going on in Hong Kong and China, I will say Adam Silver could have said this. He's an educated guy. He could have said this. We are an American company first and foremost, and we do stand for democracy and freedom. That's it. That's it.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And it's a very diplomatic answer. You're not appeasing the Chinese government, but you're also not losing your values. But when you literally have one of your superstars, James Harden, literally apologizing to the Chinese government, your woke card's out of the window. Like, you can't. I don't care what you do now. Like, you can't tell me you're woke, but then it's like, to me, you can't play that. See, that's why I always say, if you're going to dip your toes on social issues, you better go all in. You can't half-seas with this shit. You can't kind of, I'm going to be conveniently woke. I'm going to conveniently take a stand here, but not here. You can't play that game, because you end up looking bad. And then if people keep receipts, like me, you, other people tend to, you're going to come out looking really bad. And I think the NBA is now starting to figure that out. So
yeah, it conveniently woke. Conveniently.
Absolutely. Woke. And I'm sure Mark Cuban had his reasons. Look, Mark Cuban's, he's an egomaniac and he wants to martyr himself as such. So even that looks bad because it's like, now all of a sudden you want to make it an issue to not play the anthem after.
Mark is interesting to me because Mark, like, he's always been like this libertarian type figure up until recently. Like, it wasn't until like a year or two ago where he's been suddenly starting to veer left. And, you know, I like Mark, but it's like, why all of a sudden?
He's weird. I can never get a read on him. It's like he's always
tried to be an enlightened centrist. That's his thing. He's always tried to play both sides. He's always tried to be a centrist, and he's always like stood for certain like values of freedom and entrepreneurship and market. But then when the pandemic happened, all of a sudden everything changed. I don't know if you noticed. I don't know. You probably don't pay attention to much of Mark Cuban, but Mark Cuban came.
I do. No, I like Mark Cuban a lot. Like,
but he was all about the free market until the pandemic. After the pandemic happened, he changed his mind on a lot of his economic beliefs because he's like, oh, maybe the free market
system doesn't work.
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah. It works for me.
And it's also easy to say that now that you've made your billions, right? And you own your NBA team and you're printing money. Like, it's easy for you to now have that come to Jesus moment.
Right. Like, Mark Cuban can have 10 tweets and 5 of them I'll be like, yes, Mark, preach. And then 5 of them I'll be like, ooh, no, Mark.
And that's okay. And I want to say that's okay. It's okay. Like, I said this.
I genuinely like the dude. Overall, I like the guy.
I said this on a podcast I was on this week. Shout out to the Vanguard guys, by the way. I'll plug them at the end of the show. But I said this. That's okay. Like, we live in this world now where like everybody has to agree with us. Like, we have to be around people that just always agree with us, always see the world how we see it, and you can't have these like heterodox thinkers. Like, and Mark Cuban, I've always looked at him as a heterodox thinker. Like, I like his views on like politics and society as a whole more so than I like basketball. Like, I thought he was a fucking idiot with like the Lakers should amnesty Kobe. Like, he's a moron for that. Like, so I've always hated him. His basketball takes I've always hated on, but I've never had an issue with like his life perspective. Like, I've watched him talk about his, like, how he came up and how he gained his fortune and his money. And he's an interesting guy and he's a heterodox thinker. And I respect him for that. I don't agree with everything, especially his like free market, you know, libertarian views that he has. Obviously I don't agree with like 90% of that shit, but you know, he's an interesting guy. So this isn't an anti-Mark Cuban thing, but Mark Cuban's another guy that likes the attention and likes to point the camera at himself. So, and who knows, maybe Mark Cuban's got political aspirations. I mean, he's a billionaire who's bored. I mean, he's made his money.
But I think he would have ran in 2020 if he really did.
But I think that, and when I say he's got political aspirations, I'm not saying like he's got aspirations in 2024. I think he's maybe looking more long term, like maybe 2028, because he's still a relatively young guy. So he's not old by any stretch of the imagination. So you know, who knows, man? Who knows? You know, I never count out with these billionaires, but
I wouldn't vote for him. I would not vote for Mark Cuban.
I wouldn't either, but hey, but you know, there's some existential Dems out there like, oh,
the guy from Shark Tank is running. He's so smart.
Hey, didn't you hate Trump because he was a reality show star? So now you want to elect another?
Okay. Hollywood elite? You don't like Hollywood elite? Oh, okay.
Right.
What about those New York liberals that you scream about all the time? Even though he's not a liberal, but he's
right. Yeah, man, we'll close it out there. Good show as always. Next week we're going to talk about Andrew Yang. I want to get your take on Andrew Yang. You being a fellow New Yorker.
Your appearance on the Vanguard, and I was just we'll save it for next week.
Yeah, we'll save that. We'll save that.
A little behind the curtain. My dad is a union leader in New York City, and I was able to be in on a Zoom meeting without them knowing.
Oh,
the mayoral candidates of New York City pitching to my father's union. So
save that for next week. I want to hear about this.
That was interesting. I was really impressed with one person who I think has no chance. But we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah, we'll definitely. I definitely want to hear about it next week. Yeah. Absolutely. So we'll definitely save that for the show next week. Yeah. But yeah, man, that's it for today. As always, thank you guys for listening. If you like the show and you want to support the show, definitely drop us a review on iTunes and Spotify. As always, the show is available anywhere you can find podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeart, anywhere where podcasts are free on the internet. This show is there. So check us out. Definitely drop us a review and a like and continue to support us. As always, thank you guys, the audience. I say guys, gals, children, whoever's listening, non-binary, whoever's listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. Without you guys, there is no podcast. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at The Manuel Brown, Facebook, The Manuel Brown, Instagram, The Manuel Brown, everywhere, The Manuel Brown. Also follow the show on Instagram at AGS Pod, on Twitter at AGS Podcast. What else? Josh, go plug your show, man.
My name is Josh. I'm Josh Rodriguez, at Josh_Rodriguez_ for all my personal stuff. My basketball podcast, NBA podcast is The Dime with Josh Rodriguez. Search for it wherever you listen to your podcast, and the Twitter handle is at The Dime NBA, as is the Instagram handle. So
yes,
every Thursday,
check us out. Yeah, man, check out The Dime. Check out New Pods on the Block, or is it New Kids?
We're on hiatus right now.
Hey, by the way, I think I have some thoughts that I want to share on a future episode of. If you guys will have me on,
yes,
I'm a well-versed guy. You know, I can.
Let's go.
Hey, I'm always down, man.
Love it.
I'm always down. Absolutely. You know, I'm always down to share my thoughts on anything and everything. You know,
absolutely, man. That'd be
my wife makes fun of me that I'm literally that guy with the sign on the chair that's like, I will debate anyone about anything. I'm that guy. So why not?
That's why we get along, man. That's exactly why we get along.
Absolutely. No, make sure you check out The Dime. Make sure you go follow Josh and everything that he does on his side of things. And yeah, man, thank you guys for listening as always, man. We'll be back next week with another episode of the podcast, depending on where you are on Earth and where you are in America. Stay safe. Winter is kicking our ass in some parts of the country, so please be safe, drive safe, and stay warm. And we will see you next week on another episode of the podcast. For Josh Rodriguez, I am Manny Brown. We are out of here. Peace.
Hey, my dark darlings. Hopefully, you've been enjoying our latest videos. We're a small crew here at Something Scary, so we have to make sure that the work that goes into our episodes gets done in order and on schedule. So that's why I want to tell you about our sponsor, Monday.com. Monday.com is an online teamwork platform that keeps your team connected from anywhere. I really enjoy the visual ease of using Monday.com. It helps banish the demons of confusing email chains, or who's doing what and by when. And it helps make sure everyone is aligned and on the same page. One of the things that I enjoy the most about Monday.com is that it's customizable, so it feels like it could fit any type of collaboration or industry. Build confidence within your team and reach every goal with ease. Visit Monday.com to start your free 2-week trial.